Dialogue. I'm your host, Scotty. I'm here with my co host, Saur. Today, we are recapping a history making game for Lionel Messi, a 2-1 victory for Inter Miami that sees the Herons climb the table. And we're going to give out some awards and have some fun with it. But before all of that, I invite my friend, my co host, Saur. How are you feeling on this fine Thursday evening?
Yeah, it's a late night edition of the Drive Pink Dialogue. Welcome, everybody. I am usually getting ready for bed today, but I'll be honest, this is my fault that it's been delayed to this time. So I apologize, but I'm excited for it. As you said, history making moment for Lionel Messi. Didn't feel like as much of a history making game, almost could have lost it, but came out with the 3 points, and that's all that matters. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I feel like I watched the game again, and it felt like the first time in a long time I watched it again because this past weekend's game against Montreal, I kind of just focused on Telasco Segovia a lot during my rewatch, and I feel like I missed a lot of the game. And then during the Club World Cup, we didn't exactly have replays. I did end up rewatching the Palmeiras game because someone sent me the link, and I appreciate them for that. But it had really been a while since I had rewatched a game like this. And so I felt like I learned a lot, and I have much more stern thoughts than I did last night after the game. My initial impression was that this is a team that went in and they looked meh, but they got a 2-1 win, and there was some poor performances, some good performances, some inconsistent up and down performances. But that all in all, it was kind of solid. My impression now is it was a pretty poor game that Inter Miami got bailed out in because Messi is incredible. Sergio Busquets had an incredible pass, and Oscar Stardi had some really, really nice saves. And that got them a 2-1 victory that I'm not sure they really deserved. I think maybe you could convince me that New England was the better team over the course of 90 minutes, which is not where I was last night, if I'm being perfectly honest.
No, I remember making a statement yesterday that Inter Miami looked good in the first half and were good for the 2 goals that they scored. Going into the second half, I was very comfortable with how the game is going to go. And on the rewatch, I was very surprised at how many chances New England actually had to go ahead in the first half as well, and how much they were threatening in front of our goal. And I looked at the game and I was like, wow, they're really going for it. And I'm surprised Inter Miami hasn't conceded, partly because New England can't seem to score goals, partly because Astari had a good game. But I agree with you. I thought it was a very, very poor performance from 10 Inter Miami players on that pitch. And one of them was the superstar that bailed us out. Shouldn't have looked that easy for a team like New England Revolution, who's been not that great this entire season and honestly been struggling for identity, been struggling for goals, and struggling for points. So I think it was the quality and talent at the end of the day that bailed into Miami out rather than us playing good football. Concerning signs going into the next stretch of games, because I feel like this was a similar feeling we had after the first 8 games of the season, where we didn't necessarily look good but continued to get some sort of a result that has kept us in the hunt for that top spot in the East. So I hope this is not a pattern that repeats itself against Nashville, because if it does, then I'm going to be very, very concerned.
Yeah. You think about that 1-0 win against Columbus Crew in Cleveland, the Philadelphia win 2-1 earlier in the season, a 2-1 Atlanta win where Fafa Bico hits the winner in sort of the 89th minute. Like there was a lot of games where Inter Miami won, but it didn't feel like they were really the better team. And again, when you have this level of talent, I think that's disappointing. Uh, we're going to get into the game, but before we do, I just want to run through things quickly. There hasn't been many updates over the last couple of days or at least in the last 24 hours on the Rodrigo de Paul news. So I will just say we still expect that to go through. I think right now Inter Miami is negotiating with Atletico Madrid to get Atletico Madrid paid in a way that suits Inter Miami and what they have to do with the MLS roster rules. So no update, no finality. We don't exactly know how that's going to work, but that's where we're at. And then the other two things I wanted to mention: Brian Rodriguez reported back to Club America today, I guess. And they have a game tomorrow. The first game of the Apertura for Liga MX is tomorrow. They play Juarez. So who knows what's going on with that? But I think he's going to be a part of the Club America setup for them tomorrow night and this weekend. So once you get reintegrated, it might be a little harder to extricate yourself from that situation. I still think he has 1 year left on his contract, so I don't think it's like necessarily an easy situation for them. But um, whatever's happening, it feels like that may put a little bit of a wrench in Brian Rodriguez move. Um, and then lastly, we heard earlier this week David Ruiz, Gonzalo Lujan, and Yannick Bright were back in team training. None of them traveled with the team to that game against New England last night, but I expect all three of them to be available for this weekend's game. So, from an injury report perspective, that's good news.
Yeah, Brian Rodriguez, don't know if it comes through or not. See, I'm more concerned about DePaul for right now. And if that happens, then I think Brian Rodriguez, whatever happens, is going to be supplemental. Um, I'm very excited for Yannick Bright to come back, David Ruiz to come back. I think it's been a long time since we've seen them. And I feel like we're hitting that time of the season where we're going to start missing Yannick Bright the more games he's unavailable. So I'm glad he's coming back for the crunch games. And honestly, if you ask me, he could slot straight back in and will be fine going forward. So excited for especially him to be back and giving him awards as well. It feels weird not having done so in a while.
Just quickly, Wookie asked in the chat, do the rules allow Rodrigo de Paul to join with somehow keeping Sergio Busquets? We don't know what in which way Inter Miami is planning on making this happen. It's our understanding, just by reading the tea leaves, it feels like they can make it all work. I was sort of thinking about how it might be feasible, and maybe there's a way you can sort of loan DePaul in until January with a mandatory purchase option, and that you can have Atletico Madrid cover most of his salary until then, and then you just add that amount to the purchase when it does become official in January. I don't know if that's something the MLS would. I mean, I'm sure they would frown upon it, but I don't know if it's technically against the rules. So, whatever it is, Inter Miami clearly has a plan to make it happen. Should we just skip to the 27th minute when Redondo puts the ball over the top to Allende? It kind of gets pushed away to Tanner Beeson, who heads it back towards his own goal. And you know what you don't want to do? Head the ball back to your own goal in an area where Lionel Messi can get onto it. It's exactly what he does. One-touch shot into the back of the net. And what felt like a little bit of a chaotic, lethargic start was immediately turned into, oh, Inter Miami's doing what Inter Miami does. It's 1-0 Herons because New England made a silly mistake.
Yeah, before that moment, I don't think New England got going that much either. Inter Miami was just looking meh, not really putting anything together. And then suddenly we're 1-0 up. And New England must be kicking themselves because I thought they were playing particularly well, especially as I mentioned in that second watch. I thought their defensive shape was very good. Inter Miami didn't have much to offer in terms of breaking that down. And to concede a goal like that, where you can clearly pick your player as the one at fault for creating that opportunity for Lionel Messi. And of all players on the pitch, the one player you don't want to give a freebie to is Lionel Messi. So they must be kicking themselves. But Inter Miami undeservedly went.
You know, though, that looked a lot, now that I think about it, like what Messi did to Montreal 4 days ago, where he just gifted Prince Owusu a goal by putting it back into his own box in a position for the opposition to just get a shot on goal. Yeah, no, I mean, there's no way that's not going to turn into a goal once you make that pass.
Do
You
good
can
for
see,
others, and others will do good for you,
yeah,
you know?
exactly. It's the golden rule, right? You could see on one of the replays Beeson's face as he heads it back, and then he realizes that Messi's going to be the first one to get to it, and you can just see in slow motion in the background of this shot. No. But yeah, Inter Miami opens the scoring, and then 10 minutes later, 11 minutes later, Busquets with an incredible ball forward to Messi, who times his run really well. One guy kept Messi onside as the rest is trying to play the offside trap, and Messi breaks it really easily, gets past and sort of has another nice finish past um, Ivic, the goalkeeper, and it's 2-0. And at this point, it felt like Inter Miami was going to run away with it. This felt kind of similar to the Montreal game, where once they got going, it was an avalanche. Um, and so from that point, I felt very comfortable in the game state. And I think it gave us this false impression that we really controlled the first half, because on the rewatch, I definitely didn't get that sense.
Yeah, I think the 2-0 scoreline was a bit deceptive and flattering to Inter Miami. By the way, what a pass by Sergio Busquets. Beautiful. Reminded me of the pass that Lionel Messi had against Montreal that Allende wasn't able to put away. But also the first time finish by Lionel Messi was brilliant.
Yeah.
It was a very difficult finish. So the goal we constructed was great, but those kind of opportunities where we had clear cut chances in front of goal were very few and far between. I don't think Inter Miami did enough to create outright opportunities, whereas you would say we just overwhelmed their goal. And I think New England was struggling a little bit, at least in the first half, to put consistent pressure on the ball. So it almost felt like, okay, this is smooth sailing for Inter Miami. But New England had a couple of really good opportunities, especially with that ball over the to Campana running in behind our defense. I think the difference between Montreal in this game was the fact that Inter Miami was actually playing a much higher line, whereas against Montreal we were playing a little bit more of a mid block, and New England was using that high line a lot better than Montreal was. And I think Campana had a couple of really good opportunities that on any given day he could have probably buried for New England. I've seen him do it for Inter Miami. He just couldn't do it against us. Maybe he still has a little bit of feelings for his old.
Yeah, no, there's two moments right before halftime. It's the second minute of first half stoppage time and the third minute of first half stoppage time. Campana forced a really nice save out of Ustadi, and then a minute later, there's a really poor turnover by Cello that leads to another shot by Campana that he puts, and it kind of curls against the side of netting. So it's it's outside the net. It's out of bounds for a goal kick, but it really wasn't far from. I'm really putting Ustari under pressure. So, yeah, they did have some danger at the end of the first half, but again, there's something about this team where it's like you feel really good with the 2-0 lead because you think they can put it on them and just sort of come out and dominate the second half, and then all of a sudden a 2-0 lead can turn into 5-0, as we've seen with this team so many times before. It hasn't been that way though when you actually stop and think about it this season. So. Um, Yeah, and they didn't really go for the kill in this game, which is something we praised them for in that game against Montreal. Getting into the second half, there was a couple moments that I thought were worth dwelling on for a second. 64th minute, there was a great save by Ustadi on a Campana shot. He really has to get low quickly to make the save, and it's just a desperation save that he puts into the path of Chankalai, who just hits into the side netting on what would have been an open goal. Another really nice save from Mustari in the 72nd minute. And then the breakthrough comes in the 80th minute. Allende with a turnover to Carlos Gil, who dribbles into space. And we saw him a couple times fire, trying to hit that far post, going the other direction, sort of drifting to his left. This time he's drifting to his right, and he is able to put it into that top right corner. 80th minute, Allende turnover turns into a Gil goal, and Inter Miami's lead is cut from 2-0 to 2-1.
Yeah, in terms of total shots created in the second half, New England had 11 compared to Inter Miami's 5. There was a clear difference in quality in the second half. I thought New England changed their shape. Caleb Porter decided to change a few things as soon as Thomas Jankelai came on. I think Carlos Hill got a lot more opportunity on the ball. The space was there for him to play in. Leo Campana had the opportunity to now start playing with Thomas Shankalai, who I thought was better than Langoni. And their 4-2-3-1 shape, instead of the three at the back that they were playing earlier, allowed their main man to get on the ball more, and they just were a lot more threatening. They kept coming at us. There was opportunity after opportunity, and I think the second half, our defense really struggled to deal with some of their over the top balls, some of their direct balls into the striker. Campana had the better Falcone on a number of occasions. I thought Aviles was caught in the wrong position a couple of times. You mentioned that opportunity by Chankalai. That should have gone in. I have no idea how that didn't go in. He shot it with his right foot, the outside of it, and side netted it, whereas he could have just tapped it in with his left foot. And then a couple of other opportunities as well. So I thought New England overall was a lot better. And Inter Miami just lost the legs or the impetus to play any offensive attacks consistently. We barely put any pressure together on the ball.
Yeah, it was. In Changalai's defense, I think it may have been his first touch of the game. He had
Yeah.
just come on like 2 minutes earlier, so you know, obviously he should finish that as a professional. But if it's your first touch of the game, you can understand why he might not be as precise. Um, I think Inter Miami got a little lucky. There was another moment where Maxi Falcone had to make sort of a goal line stop in the last few minutes of the game before David Martinez comes on, and they go to a back five, and Inter Miami is able to kill it out. All in all, though, I think there's a couple of reasons this could have been the case. And I think on the rewatch, it started to become clear to me. A couple of people mentioned that it was a lack of legs. They were tired, which is, I think, an understandable excuse when you're on the road for the second time in 4 days. You just came off that World Cup, which was ultra intense. Um, but that's not my conclusion at the end of this game. I did think there was a number of poor performances from individuals, and so if you want to say individually that was a cause of their lack of, you know, quality play, fine, I can buy that. But to me, I thought there was a glaring issue in how the design of this team was put together from a player profile perspective, and I want to get into that in a minute. But was there any other moments in this game that you thought were worth sort of sitting on for a few minutes?
No, not really. There were a couple of opportunities. Messi had a really nice run where I thought he's going to do the exact same thing he did against Montreal in the second half, where he just took the ball, ran with it, and then he got driven a little bit out of the line of the goal and hit the defender instead when he shot the ball. But I thought Messi was fantastic overall. Brilliant performance from him. The rest of the team, not as much.
Yeah, we'll talk about Messi more when we get to awards. Um, okay, so here is the lineup changes from what we had seen previously. Kramaski came off for Federico Redondo, and Talasco Segovia comes off for Baltasar Rodriguez. Baltasar gets his first start of the season, and Segovia gets a little bit of rest. So on paper, you can understand the thinking there. But then when you sort of see how the game plays out, especially the second time, I thought it was pretty clear why the team was struggling going forward. And one of the things that we saw in the first when we were watching it live is that they weren't really able to sustain possession going forward, and their success came on a full, a direct ball or two that ended up in a good position for them. But when it came to actual build-up play, it was really weak in this game. I thought part of the reason was Tadeo Allende not being the right tool for this game. He's a guy that stretches the field vertically, and I thought with the way New England was going to play in the midfield and how they were going to sit back defensively, you needed guys that were going to help you play through the midfield. And with Allende not really being that guy, I thought it was a mistake to play him. But the bigger one was Baltasar, who played like a winger, in my opinion. He wasn't playing this midfield role that we've seen Segovia play over the last couple of weeks, that has seen Segovia play much better. He was playing that role that Segovia was being told to play 2.5 months ago when we were kind of wondering how good Segovia really was, and he wasn't as effective. He was playing high up the field, trying to be I just thought he was really struggling to find the game from a in possession perspective. And so when you lose that outlet, when you don't have the balls over the top to Allende, when Cello and Jordi Alba aren't having particularly good games getting up the wings, especially Cello, all of a sudden you're not able to progress the ball in ways other than just forcing it through Messi up the middle, which is we've seen from this team, not a strategy to dominate games. And I thought that was ultimately the end of them. Once they put Segovia on the field, it improved. But yeah, I thought that was the mistake. I don't think Baltasar and Allende can play at the same time. until you get someone else in the midfield to be really effective
or at least
possessing the
not in
ball.
this position, this tactical setup. If you
Yeah.
change that to a 4-3-3 and ask Rodriguez to play that wide forward role as the winger, like the left winger, then maybe he can do that. But I think in this game, you kind of handicapped yourself by playing Allende because it's not his game, not his fault. We can talk a little bit more about him, but I thought he was a non-factor in this game. So then you're depending on your other wide midfielder to try and create opportunity. I agree with you that Rodriguez was playing really, really was playing wide, and I don't know if he was playing as a quintessential winger. I don't think he was. He was still trying to come a little bit narrow at times, but the
Sure, but it was
role
high up the
that's
field
yeah, it was high up the
and it was
field,
hard
and
to
it
connect with.
wasn't a connector role.
Yeah.
He was trying to run in front of the goal, and it wasn't linking the play up well. The reason Segovia has worked so well in that role recently is because he does that connector role so well. He brings everyone together, he facilitates the ball movement. I think that was a clear issue. And then the third issue was me for me was I think you add Redondo in the middle, and that exacerbates the problem even more so. Because Redondo's not a progressive passer either. He's a very negative passer of the ball as well. So when you don't have Allende, who's an option for you, when Baltasar Rodriguez is not being the one that's progressing the ball by either carrying the ball or making those plays, then you're left with just Redondo and Busquets. Busquets obviously had that opportunity in the second goal where he had the assist. He does what he does best, but Redondo doesn't necessarily uh, make the play dynamic. He doesn't play forward passes. He doesn't add verticality. So I think those three have the perfect recipe for disaster in terms of creating opportunities in front of goal.
Yeah, I think you kind of nailed it there. I don't want to blame Redondo too much because he doesn't have anyone to pass to when these guys aren't getting themselves open. So you can understand, but you're right. That's not really his
And
game, anyways.
it's not about blaming Redondo either. I think it's on the coaching staff to put the
Yeah.
right dynamic together on the field. So when you put three of the players who don't necessarily balance each other out that well, or at least did not in this game, then you can't really blame the players for their skill sets, right? Redondo just doesn't do that. So
Yeah. I also, listen, I don't think any of those guys had good individual performances either. Uh, but I do agree with you. I thought structurally it wasn't really set up for success. I think we learned a lot about Baltasar in this game, and maybe so did Javier Mascherano and the coaching staff. Maybe they envisioned him doing something that certainly he didn't do in this game, and so maybe he was going to be the key that made everything work. Like I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt on that, but certainly it didn't work, and you kind of have to learn whether that's working with Baltasar to be in the right positions, to be sort of a connector, to be more of a midfielder than sort of a he felt a lot like just this high buzzing around pressing forward that was not a part of the buildup. And when there was no buildup, he was sort of not a not a part of the game a lot in possession. Sort of my takeaway. Um, and so I thought that was the problem. They really struggled to get the ball forward, and that affects Suarez's game. Obviously, Messi still was not hampered by the fact that nothing around him was going particularly well. But yeah, it's it was just not set up an 11 that was set up to do a lot offensively. And when that's the case, you're kind of lucky you get a 2-1 victory. I'm okay with this as long as they learn from it. Um, and so now moving forward, if we see that lineup again with Allende and Baltasar on the same team, or sort of on opposite wings, I'm going to be pretty nervous about it because I think they might be sort of like for like, really, because what is Allende gives you? He gives you the balls over the top. Well, listen, Baltasar looks pacey. He looks quick. Um, he was making some runs in behind, but what he wasn't doing was helping in the build out with that smooth, sort of calm, composed presence in the midfield like we've seen from Segovia. So I think maybe he is more of a like for like sub for Allende than for Segovia, and that may be what we learned. You're on mute.
I was saying that was evident quite immediately as soon as we saw the first 5 minutes of Baltazar in that game, where you could tell he's a very similar player to Allende, or at least very dissimilar to Segovia.
Yeah.
Against Nashville, I expect Segovia to start, and I expect um, Kremaski to be in the middle. So I think these same issues won't happen, but you never know.
No, but it's, you got to learn from them moving forward.
Exactly.
Um, Yeah, I think the thing that's unlocked this team so effectively over the past couple weeks, really 6 weeks now, is Messi really taking everything more seriously or with more intensity. But then Segovia finding his role in the midfield. And without that, we looked a lot worse. And this is the first time he hasn't started since, we got into a little bit of form here. So um, we missed him. And it's something the coaching staff has to figure out. Anything else you want to talk? I mean, that felt like the game to me, really. Like if Inter Miami has the same offense they put out against Montreal, I think we could have won this game 4-0, 4-1, and then you don't see New England building some confidence and some patterns of play in that second half that leads to a goal, and Inter Miami kind of cruises to a big win here. But instead, they never really had that, and so New England was always in the game, and they started to win the midfield battle. And we talked about Al Hassan Yusuf, but Matt Polster also I thought was solid in that midfield for New England. And so they started creating opportunities for their forwards going forward. Carlos Heel I thought he had a really nice second half. Um, and the wide players for New England in the first half, they were really poor with their final product. That cross in was just really poor, but they started to get better sort of in that second half. And so they started to get more dangerous and build more confidence. And Inter Miami didn't really have an offensive response to it, I think, because of the guys we had on the field.
Yeah, and I think the onus lies on the coach to change things when the opposition coach is also changing things. When Caleb Porter changed to a 4-2-3-1, I think he overloaded the midfield. And into Miami with Baltasar Rodríguez on the pitch and Allende on the pitch, who don't necessarily play in the middle as much, lost the midfield battle because of the lack of numbers. Um, Javier Mascherano should have recognized it. He probably did recognize it. That's why he brought in both Kremaski and Segovia. And that sort of brought back a little bit of control, but not entirely. And then I think just the last point on New England, we have to realize they haven't actually lost a lot of games this season by more than a goals difference. I think they've only lost one game this season by more than a goals difference. So this is a team that tends to be in games for the full 90 minutes. And there's no harm in letting them back into the game, especially away from home when you do have tired legs and you've played so many games. There were glaring issues, and I think the coaching staff needs to address it. But as long as you can put on a good performance against Nashville and show that you are learning from some of the changes that you've made in this game, I think that is going to be the ultimate outcome from this game. You got the 3 points. Yes, you can be happy about it, but you need to move on from it and learn from the issues that you had in using certain players the way you did.
Yeah, I don't want to give them an excuse because this is a team that beat Porto and outplayed Palmeiras for 80 minutes. Like they shouldn't be doing things that other MLS teams are doing. They should
Yeah.
be better than that. So, um, it's not an excuse. They should be better. This. I think if you put out that same lineup that they put out against Montreal, they might win this game 4-0. And the fact that a few changes, and it's two changes, right? It's
Yeah.
not significant rotation, causes this level of disruption to the 11. I think that's worrisome. And again, if Messi it doesn't start this game, Inter Miami loses. Like
Hmm.
he won them the game, and him and Ustari also had a nice game. So, um, 2-1. Are you ready to get to awards? I will admit it wasn't. It's like it was a very much a MLS midseason game where midweek road game, not a great opponent, not a great performance by a ton of players. Uh, Kind of disappointing, but not like infuriating because you get 3 points. So it's kind of a meh game if you ask me.
Yeah, a Wednesday evening game. I think there's a little bit of exhaustion with how many games we've had as well as fans. So I feel like when you don't have a performance from the team, it sort of deflates the mood a little bit. So let's get straight into the awards because I know I have some good ones and hopefully you have some good ones. And I hope you don't steal my good ones. So let's kick it off with awards.
Okay, well, if you haven't seen the show before, just know that we give out 6 awards: a Heron of the Match, a Heron that flew north, and 2 individual awards each. Because you went first last time, I will go first this time and give the man of the match to none other than Lionel Messi. Um, this is an Inter Miami podcast and show. It's not a Lionel Messi podcast and show. So one of the things we think about consciously is not over relying on conversations about Messi, not making sure we give him the man of the match every single week, even though he really is probably the best player every single game. Um, Trying to recognize other players on the team. We think about this with our thumbnails a lot, not making Messi the picture on the thumbnail too often. But he's just been on fire. He broke MLS history by scoring multiple goals for the 4th straight MLS game. He is in incredible form. We saw at the Club World Cup that he is still a world-class talent. And in this game, he won the game for Inter Miami in a game where the team didn't play particularly well.
Is this the best form he's been in consistently for Inter Miami, like across multiple stretch of games? Maybe I remember
At,
a better stretch of games. Maybe the
the
League's
League's
Cup when he
Cup,
first
the
came.
League's Cup
Yeah,
is
when he
is
first joined.
his peak. But I will say, earlier this season, I thought he was in tremendous form.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So
And he hasn't
yeah,
necessarily. Well, he did look poor for a stretch of 4 games, maybe when Inter Miami wasn't playing well at all. But even in some of those games, you're like, okay, he's doing bits when he won us some games. So
let,
regardless,
let's not talk about Messi. Let's
yeah,
talk about
this
the
is.
the potential lack of Messi that we are probably going to get at some point this season. Because, like we just said, 2 changes to the starting 11 and the team felt discombobulated. And if you take Messi out, I mean, I can't even imagine right now how this team finds success without Messi. Um, the last game he didn't play, I think, was maybe that FC Dallas game where Ian Frey just took over in the first half. But like, I'm not sure
And we still lost.
when we still lost. I'm not sure. I think this coaching staff, and not that the talent's not on the roster, but with just the way we've seen this coaching staff deploy them, that this team is going to be good when Messi inevitably gets a rest, or he tweaks a hip flexor or something and he has to miss a game, or there's a road trip across country that he has to miss. I think maybe, do we play Seattle? Is that a home game or a road game? Not the point. Like, you can't just go 90 minutes every single game with the number of games that we're going to have to play over the next couple months. That would be irresponsible. And you're making it less likely that he's available for the most important game, which will come in October and November. And I don't know how this team is going to survive without him, if I'm being honest. And it's never been that way since he got here, or at least since the beginning of 2024.
You say we don't rely too often on Messi when it comes to awards, thumbnails, conversations, but I feel like this is the first time in a long while that this team is truly and utterly reliant on Lionel Messi to get
Yeah.
the results. I think, of course, we don't have the result in the Club World Cup that we did without Messi. Absolutely not. And then all the last 2-3 games in the MLS as well, Inter Miami has very truly relied on Lionel Messi. He's created history in one sense yesterday. He could have had another point of history if he had another goal contribution, becoming, I think, the only player in the MLS to have +3 goal contributions in consecutive games. So he is carrying this team on his shoulder. One point that I want to credit Tata Martino for is the fact that he learned how to play this team without Lionel Messi, and he learned how to play this team to win without Lionel Messi. Javier Mascherano hasn't been able to do that yet, and that's the worrisome sign because I fear that we're going to inevitably have to rest Lionel Messi, may lose him for a couple of games here or there. And I don't know if this team has learned how to beat teams without Lionel Messi or without relying on Lionel Messi. So we'll see when it comes to that, but it's definitely a fear in my heart that we won't
And
be able to get the results when it matters the most without Messi.
here's the thing: if you take Messi off the roster, like just on paper, this is still a better team than New England. You should be able to handle New England even without Lionel Messi.
Absolutely.
So the fact that we're relying on him to get a result every single game is it's scary. It's nervy because if he's available for every single game, then yeah, he is the best player and he is going to carry us to a lot of really good results. But I just like the worst thing that could happen is him not being either ready or at his peak form because he's been played too much at the end of the season when we need him to be great in the playoffs. So I have nothing wrong with him carrying the team. I love it. It's a lot of fun to watch. But you just want to make sure he's ready to do that when it's time to win trophies.
And you want to use your Messi credit wisely. So,
Yeah.
and
No,
you
I
don't
think
want to
that's a good way to put
overuse it as well.
Okay, let's get to second award, which is the heron that flew north. And if you're wondering what that's all about, it's because herons do not fly north for the winter. They don't fly anywhere for the winter. So if you catch a Florida heron flying north, you are catching them doing the wrong thing. And in that essence, Saur, I invite you to pick one of the poor performers and single them out for extra awful criticism.
You said it. There were a fair few poor performances, and we could have picked out a number of them. I don't know if I'm fully satisfied or convinced with my choice, but I've gone with him because he almost let New England back into the game. Not by his own self. I think there were a lot of other factors to that, but I think one glaring mistake. And overall, did not necessarily have a role to play in this game at all. Very poor on the advanced stats. Tadeo Allende for me is the heron that flew north. This was not the game for him. So any criticism that comes his way right now has to be contextualized by the fact that this is a player that wasn't suited to this game, and the coaching staff should have recognized that and probably should have let Segovia start instead of Allende. But still, you're on the pitch and you're expected to do a job. You're a professional footballer. So even if it's not a game for you, you need to find the game somehow. And I think Allende failed to do that. He had a couple of really poor moments, which led to a turnover, which led to a goal. But then overall, I think he was completely ineffective. When he's not being looked at vertically, I think the next step in his development as a player is trying to find a way how he can be effective in front of goal. He had a couple of opportunities in front of goal. He didn't take them particularly well, hit it straight at the keeper. And for that reason, I think I'm going to give this award to Tadeo Allende.
The moment that he turns the ball over and it turns into that Carlos Hill goal in the 80th minute, I thought there was about 20 turnovers by Inter Miami players that were equally as bad. It's just that's the one that ended up turning into a goal. So it's tough. I feel like to hold that one moment against him because while it was poor, it feels like a couple guys had sort of really poor turnovers, including Allende had a couple. So definitely not a good game from him. That right side I thought was particularly weak. And like you said, this just wasn't the type of game where he was going to be successful. And it's a shame that we didn't that we just left him out there. And maybe it would have been better to have Kremasky start in that position from the get go because Kremasky's not as much of an over the top player, is much more of a connector, and has sort of more of a midfield mindset. One of the things you mentioned is his development. This is a 25-year-old player. I think he is what he is at this point. He
No, I
might
think
get
you can still develop as a player over the course of 3-4 years, right? Even if you're a 29-year-old player, you can find new aspects and facets to your game. So I think development as such never stops. And I don't mean it in terms of his development as a youth or somebody who can develop more skills, but I think just the ability to find the game, understand what he needs to do in this game that's better. And maybe he can't build the skill sets, but at least he can learn to adapt the game better, right? Messi's developed over the course of his entire career. He's started off on the wing, played as a central midfielder, plays as a striker for one season.
Well,
So
let's be fair. I'm sure Messi could have done all of that when he was 17 years old
and a
at a
goalkeeper as
world-class
well,
level. Yeah,
probably.
exactly. No, I think you're right. I just he's a winger slash striker. That's what he is. And if you're asking him to be a midfielder, he's going to struggle. And could he develop into a midfielder if he decided I'm going to do that for the next 2 years? Sure, but that's not what's happening at Inter Miami right now. So, um, yeah, I thought they asked him to be in a role that he's not comfortable doing and to find a role that they didn't put him in a position to do. So tough award, but someone's got to get it, and there are other people that we will certainly throw a little shade at over the next 20 minutes or so. Okay, my first award is the Gomezito Award.
That award goes to Baltasar Rodríguez because I know you thought he looked like a little Gomez in Diego Gomez's first season, where he almost looked like a little buzzy bee that doesn't have any, or a headless chicken as you described it, that doesn't have any direction. It was very lively. It was very energetic, but didn't necessarily do anything of substance. And I think you're right. Baltasar Rodriguez had a very similar performance to that.
He was bad. He was really bad in the game. And it was more clear on the rewatch, just not involved in the offense. He has one moment I think in the 5th minute where Messi boops a ball over the top when he's making a run, and his first touch is just horrendous. Takes him out of position. He fouls the defender, who just clearly, you could just tell it was just not right. A couple other entry passes he had that were just bullets that even Suárez and Messi were just like, what is this? That led to turnovers. Defensively, it made me nervous because you could see the willingness to run and, as I mentioned, the buzzing around, but his technical defending was really poor, I thought, in this game. Just his use of body positioning, leverage, footwork, understanding how to get the ball from the defender, I thought was just like really amateurish. Um, Suarez won more balls than Baltasar in this game. So take that for what it's worth. Luis Suarez played better defense than Baltasar, in my opinion. So what I will say is Diego Gomez also looked similar his first five or so games at Inter Miami. He had a couple shots. One of them was actually a nice shot early in the game, was maybe 2 feet high, but another one that was just really off target. Like I said, a couple of passes, entry passes that he just fired in there, and like even our ultra technical front players couldn't handle it. He's not as big as Diego Gomez. He's certainly not as physical, and I don't know if Diego Gomez is an exceptionally fast player over distance. I don't know if he's quite as fast as Diego Gomez, but it looked a little bit like Diego Gomez did in his first season at Inter Miami, and so I'm giving him a positive spin on what I thought was a really, really disappointing performance from him. Um, that maybe he'll become a superstar because Diego Gomez did it. That's
I'll
my
be
award
honest,
for Gomez.
you are a lot more
For Baltasar.
critical of his performance than I thought I would be, or I thought you would be as well. So I'm surprised by that. You've clearly watched him with a lot keener eye in this game than I have. I didn't necessarily follow him the same way that you did. I didn't notice his defensive movements and his body posture and all that. But I trust you and I trust your judgment in this. So good award, absolutely. I don't think he was particularly effective. I do want to be a little careful in being so liberal with my criticism, at least. Of course, I'm the optimist here, but still, because this was his first game from minute one in the starting 11 in 3 months. He hasn't played a lot of football. He was clearly nervous as well, and I thought one thing he didn't lack, let's put it this way, was initiative and the ability to want to do something. The problem was he wasn't doing it particularly well, but that's okay. I think It's his first game. It might come with time. I saw enough that makes me think there is a player here. I didn't see enough to think that this is a player that will start for Inter Miami. So let's see where it goes from there. I agree with every point that you made. Um, and I'm not fully convinced that he has the same level of skill set like Diego Gomez to even get to that level or improve further. But I think Inter Miami needs to find a way to use him because he is part of the squad. So I hope Javier Mascherano can do that. And I'm sure there's better games in Gomezito's future than the one that he had yesterday.
Yeah, I don't know if I saw a moment from him that I thought he could build off of. Not even one. That said, I'm not writing him off. I think there's a lot of context around this game that makes it understandable that he wouldn't be performing at his absolute best. He hasn't started a game in 7 months. It's really his first time being a part of the game plan for Inter Miami. Um, I guess he did have that the one off the bench performance against San Jose, where he was probably a planned halftime substitute. But I guess a second time he's part of the game plan for the Herons and training with the team. Obviously, the coaching staff is young and inexperienced, and so wouldn't surprise me if it takes them a little bit longer to figure out how to use certain players. So, I'm not writing him off at all. And I think that's why I wanted to make this award sort of one that could turn into a positive. But yeah, that wasn't a good performance from Baltasar.
Work to do on the training pitch, son. Get back at it.
Yeah. Okay, what is your first award?
If you can guess this award without me actually providing any context, I would be very impressed. The first award is the Bacchae Award.
The back eye.
No, it's one word. It's a Greek
Bacchae.
word. It's Bacchae. Bacchae. It's named after the play by Euripides, the Greek poet. The Bacchae Award.
This is an easy one. It's obviously going to Oscar Stadi because that is a play about the defense of Athens. And he was the defender of our goal. It goes to Oscar Stadi.
No. It was not a play. It was not a play about the defense of Athens. It was a play about the god of Bacchae, Dionysus, or Dionysus, as you would say in American. Uh, Dionysus in that play was denied his divinity. People no longer considered him a god. And over the last few weeks, or a week or two, there's one player in this squad who has been denied his divinity, who we have questioned a little bit whether he's still capable of doing it at the highest level or not. And we almost had a conversation about replacing him. That player was obviously Sergio Busquets. And for that reason, this award goes to Sergio Busquets because with one pass, he completely changed everyone's perception and just showed exactly why he's still the god in the middle of the midfield. Beautiful pass. I thought, other than Messi, he was probably one of the better players on the pitch. And God forbid if he leaves the club soon, I'm going to really, really miss him. So I want to take these opportunities as much as possible and give him as many awards as I can. So the Baccae Award goes to Sergio Busquets.
First of all, great award.
Thank you.
Great award. Second of all, only one of us was questioning whether he had lost a step or not over the past few weeks. I want to
Yeah, it
be
was
very
you.
clear about that. It was not me. No, yeah, I agree with you. He was one of the good performers. And that assist is just absolute quality of the highest order to put it with the perfect placement, but obviously the vision and the IQ to know that run's happening and the connection with Messi to know he's going to make that run and to see that Messi has the offside trap beat because there's a defender, or at least trusting that Messi knows that and is making the run because of it, and then putting it forward to let him run under it. Just pure class. And Busquets is awesome, man, and you said it uh, great, really well, really well put that he's a unicorn, and yeah, I think it's a privilege to have him on the team, and I hope we have him for as long as possible.
I hope so. Him and Rodrigo de Paul in the middle together. Oof, that'll be a combination.
I think we should switch to a like a 4-4-2 diamond, so we can have four midfielders on the field at the same time when we if with that Rodrigo de Paul deal comes and we can have Busquets and Segovia and Yannick Bright in one midfield
Let's
would
be
be
honest, man. If you and I were coaching this team, we'd have like 10 midfielders playing in this
yeah.
game.
Who needs
Anyways,
fullbacks when you can have
nah,
midfielders?
absolutely.
No, yeah, he was really good. He gets an assist. And he's going to continue to be good, and he'll have a game every 6 or 7 where he has a bad turnover or something. People are going to call him wash, but the truth is he's excellent. And there's a lot of players
I
turning the ball over in bad spots, and he wasn't one of them.
I think I prefer Mistiano's interpretation of my award a lot better than my own interpretation of the award. Um, Anyways, what is your next award?
Okay, I need to make sure I don't mistake what I called this. Um, I'm giving the "We're Not Doing This Again" award.
We're not doing this ever again.
We're not doing this again award.
Oh, okay. We're not doing this again. Award goes to. I think this one's for Chelo Egan because you were just fed up with his performance yesterday, and I watched that replay, and I didn't realize how bad he actually was. I've actually got both of your awards today. There you
Nailed
go.
it. Nailed it. He was awful. He was
No,
so
he was
bad.
bad. He was bad. Yeah.
He's been so good lately, and his Club World Cup performance, I thought he was outstanding. He really stood up to the challenge, and I think he's earned a lot of fans and admirers in the Inter Miami community over the past couple of weeks. And it's like he threw it all away. It was a unbelievably bad performance. Useless going forward. Turned the ball over in bad spots a lot. Turned the ball over in ways that led to really high quality opportunities for the New England Revolution. Defensively was poor. Got out verticaled on some balls. Not good in defensive transition. And then he got beat by Peyton Miller twice off the dribble. I just it was just a really poor performance. And so this is the thing, Jello. We now know you're making a lot of money to be a really good right back. You can't do that now that we know that. And now that we've seen you go up against Palmeiras and Porto and handle yourself, and Al-Ali, and Al-Ali has some really nice wingers, we've seen you do it. You can't be putting in these types of performances. You're on too much money. You have too much responsibility, and you've shown us you're good enough. This was just horrendous. We're not doing this again. I will not go from calling for you to get out of the starting lineup into defending you because you have something to offer. For you to be doing this, that is just unacceptable. I won't do it again. So get it fixed for this weekend because that was just really, really poor. No mas, my friend. No mas.
I'll be honest. I jumped the gun on Heron that flew north, and I watched that game again, and I thought Cello's just as culpable to getting this award as Allende, honestly, and maybe
I
even
would have
more
given
of a
it to him.
case. Yeah. You know what was the moment that made me say we're not doing this again? When Cello Egan was running behind towards his own goal, Langoni outpaced him, took the ball off his feet, and then almost scored a goal. And I thought to myself, how is a professional footballer doing
It
this?
was that was right before halftime,
It
and it
was
was
terrible.
it ended in the Campana shot that hits the side netting.
Yes.
Um, it was like, what are you doing? He had like 2 or 3 really poor turnovers. That was the most egregious. But then he also didn't offer anything in the buildup, anything in possession, anything going forward. Got burned a couple times down that right side. Uh, Him and Allende both were poor, and that right side just became a black hole for Inter Miami. And so when we're talking about why did the Herons not look better, part of it is because an entire half the pitch, which is, the half the pitch that Messi vacates as he drifts centrally. So that entire right half the pitch was just a black hole for the Herons. and it wasn't much better on the left, if we're being honest. But um, yeah, he was really. That was just. Uh, don't do it again, and I'll forgive you. But if you make this a trend, I don't know if I can. I don't know if you can earn my trust again. If I'm being honest.
We'll need another Club World Cup for that.
Yeah. But also,
Okay,
I think now that we learned that he's on the bigger contract, it makes it
difficult to
it changes
digest these
things.
performances.
It
Yeah.
changes things. Yeah. Okay, Sora. Final award. What you got for us?
My final award
Wait, hold on.
is
Did I steal your award?
no, you did not. You did not steal my award.
Okay, good.
But that one was the best one I had, and now you know the quality is going to go down from here. The next award is the Confundus Charm Award, and this is for all Harry Potter fans out there.
The Confundus Charm Award. I've certainly seen Harry Potter. I'm not that detailed, so I'm gonna guess this has to do with confusing your opponent,
Yep.
and that.
Well, confusing. I don't know if it's
Okay.
confusing your opponent.
See, it changes everything from being Suarez confusing the opponent to Toto Avila's just being confused. Um, I'm going to give this to Oscar Stadi because I think he deserves an award. No, I'm going to give it to Maxi Falcone because he confused you with his performance because there were some positives, there were some negatives. And you found a way to give a Harry Potter award. The Confundus Charm, Maxi Falcone. Nailed it.
Okay, so in my defense, I did have an award for Oscar Starry after this, in case you didn't give one, because I thought
Okay.
you'd definitely give one to him.
Okay.
So, well, here we are. We can talk about him in more detail. But you're absolutely right. It's Maxi Falcone because he really confused me. And I don't know if you cheated here, but I will give you the benefit of doubt. I
What?
was
Okay.
utterly confused by Maxi Falcone's performance. I thought he was good in certain instances. I thought he was poor in certain instances. I rewatched the game and the confusion became even more. So I would like you to tell me whether he had a good performance, bad performance, or whether you were just as confused as I am, because I thought he had some really good moments and then I thought he had some really poor moments, and that was his game.
No, I think that you nailed it. Um, he did have some nice moments, especially in the box. I think you nailed it yesterday in the post game where his defending in the box is really impressive, especially because he's not particularly big. You would have expected him, just based on his profile, to be a guy that would have been good outside of his box. Maybe he's good in possession and all that other stuff, but he's a really instinctual box defender. But also there was some poor moments when he was out in space. Got beat a couple times. Every single time the ball was in the air,
He lost it.
Campana just like bodying him off or just poked it over his head. Langoni got him again, got him once too in the second half. Um, Not Langoni, Luis
Shankly.
Diaz. No, Luis Diaz.
Yeah.
Yeah. This isn't a this performance. It's the fact that he's confusing in general. He's like a 27-year-old center back. You would have expected him to be relatively consistent with his skill set, and yet sometimes he's just poor. And then there are other games where he's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And this one was sort of a Jekyll and Hyde from possession to possession. So I would give him an average performance because it was both good and bad.
Fair enough. I think it cancels itself out, but I think he's one of the better defenders that we have on the team right now, so can't really do much with it, right?
Where are you with the defenders? Because I was thinking about this today. I kind of have my order now with one wild card.
I'll be honest. I think it's Allen and Ian Frey as my centre back partnership, and then Cello Wigan as my right back. That's the best partnership that I think we can put together.
I have Ian Frey as my sort of wild card because I don't think we've seen him enough at center back this year,
Yeah.
or really in the past, since the beginning of 2024, since his injury in 2023. I don't think we've seen him a ton at center back. So kind of leaving him off my list. But to me, it's Aviles and Allen.
Yeah, has
Maxi
to be.
Falcone is relatively inconsistent. I know Aviles gets a lot of frustration because of the yellow cards, but like a yellow card doesn't mean you had a bad performance. It's people get yellow cards all the time, and it's not like Aviles is turning those in consistently into second yellows. Um, and then Maxi Falcone is a clear 3 to me, and then I think there's a drop off to get to Lujan and Ryan Saylor.
Drop off till
So
you get to Ryan Saylor and then drop Lujan off back to where he came from.
yeah.
Yeah,
And then
I'm so
David
mean.
Martinez be in that Maxi Falcone range, but he's going to be
I
leaving the
think so.
team soon.
Yeah.
So I think he has a role to play, but it wouldn't shock me at all if he's not a starter by the time he gets to the playoffs. I think we're probably going to bring in a center back in this summer
I
window,
think we
or at
need
least
to.
I think that's the plan, is to bring in a center back. So I think Noah Allen and this new
The new
back could
signing.
be our starters, and then it could be Aviles first off the bench, or it could be Ian Frey, potentially outplaying all of these guys. Although for me, it's certainly Ian Frey at right back, especially after that performance from Cello. So Maxi Falcone, interesting player, because we saw him at times during the Club World Cup. He was phenomenal against some of the best teams in the world, and then he's just inconsistent other times,
If
and
we
that
can
makes it
get a
hard to trust.
Rolls Royce defender in this transfer window, and Maxi Falcone is our backup option, I think I'll be sleeping really well because he's a phenomenal second choice center back.
Dude, we already have that.
Yeah.
You don't think that Javier Mascherano considers Gonzalo Lujan a Rolls Royce defender?
No,
It's
he
a Rolls
considers him
Royce
a
airplane,
yeah.
airplane engine, not a car, but
Yep.
it's neither here nor there.
Same thing.
Yeah, it's a Rolls
Anyways.
Royce keychain. Okay, Oscar Starry, I want to hear what your award was for him.
Peter denied award for Peter's denial award
you
for
left
Oscar
the screen for a
Starry.
second. Peter's denial?
Yeah.
Okay.
Peter's denial. Because I think Oscar Starry has been putting in consistently good performances where I think he deserves a clean sheet. But this Inter Miami team is just hellbound on not keeping a clean sheet and has denied Starry at least 3 clean sheets this entire season, if not more. And I didn't have a better award for him. That's why I kept him as my bottom tier award.
Who's Peter?
Oh, it's the Saint Peter from the Bible denying Jesus Christ 3 times. And yes, I am linking Jesus Christ to clean sheets because obviously clean sheets will be our savior.
It's a miracle that we would need.
Exactly. See?
Okay,
wasn't that bad an award?
Yeah, I see where you're going with that. Luis Suarez, I thought, had a disappointing game.
Yeah.
Got outplayed by Campana. I wouldn't call it terrible considering what I saw from Cello and Baltasar. So, Allende was pretty poor too. So it was a disappointing game. Let's put it that way. I think now that he had that one moment against Palmeiras, I will always remember that and think that could be coming at any moment. So I am happy to just keep running him out there, if I'm being honest. I know a lot of people are going to get frustrated, but
your perception of that Palmeiras goal is a lot more flowery than mine. I thought it was a really good goal, and that finish was fantastic. But there was an element of just luck involved in that as well. And I don't know if he's going to if he'll do that ever again, honestly.
It would not surprise me if that's the greatest goal of his Inter Miami career. But I'll be honest, it's probably like the 4th most impressive goal I've ever seen from an Inter Miami player outside of Lionel Messi. You got a couple bangers from Campana, a couple bangers from Robert Taylor, but that was, like, in my head at least, extra flowery. Federico Redondo, he was worse on the rewatch than it was the first time. He had some turnovers too. He did have some sort of positive dribbles, progressive carries into the final third, but I thought that was just because he had space and just no one was getting themselves open, and that was part of the bigger problem. Jordi Alba, I thought, was conservative in this game with his runs, obviously part of the game plan, but as a result wasn't as impactful.
I'm a little confused about Jordi Alba because I wanted to give him an award, but honestly didn't have one. But also, there's not much more new conversation about him. I
Hey,
think
when has that ever stopped you from giving the
that's
award?
true. I was trying to be consciously good with my awards tonight. Okay. Um, I think we're going back to the same trend that we saw before the Club World Cup, where Jordi Alba was playing conservative and not being as involved. And I'm worried that we're going to end up in the same dreadful hole that we dug ourselves in. So again, let's not be negative until we see a pattern at least.
It was just one game. Let's just
Yeah,
I'll leave
exactly.
it at that. He did have a bad turnover that led to an opportunity going the other way, but again, some other guys had 3 or 4, so I won't kill him for it. Ustari had a really nice game. I think Segovia looked good off the bench.
Hmm.
Not a surprise. I think if he starts, we win this game a little more comfortably. Kramaski and Davi Martinez come in just to see out the game.
By the
Again,
way, I do want to say something about Kramaski. I think he's now the clear favorite above Redondo for me in the middle, regardless of the game. We've come a long way since last season,
we'll
where
see.
we would, I think, regardless of the game, Kramaski is a better player than Redondo in my eyes. I think.
I'm not going to argue with you on it. I will, listen, the 2 opponents we've played so far in the MLS are not top tier quality, and we're going to see that over the next couple of weeks with
Yeah.
Cincinnati and Nashville. So we'll see. I mean, I won't go there yet, but I also think Yannick Bright coming back is going to be locked in for me in the midfield.
Yeah, but
Um,
I was talking more in terms of the competition between
no, I
Redondo and
understand.
the rest. I mean, and Kramaski.
Okay, so I think that wraps it up for this game. Is there anyone else you wanted to talk about? Rocco Rios Nova almost had to come in. Um, you called. Here's one thing I did want to say. I listened to our raw reaction, and you said if Rios has to start, it would be an absolute disaster. And I think just a disaster is probably more accurate. Um, no, but obviously we saw Ustari help us win this game, and I don't know if I trust Rocco to do the same. Okay, here's the big question. We play Nashville on Saturday. Is Gonzalo Lujan going to start that game?
Yep, he is.
And you didn't want to get negative on this podcast.
All right, guys, it's been a pleasure. We'll talk to you next time.
No, I think that's sort of like this solemn realization that's coming to us that Maxi Falcon didn't have an excellent game. Tautavius, I don't know if he's a guy that Mascherano loves. So it wouldn't surprise me if he starts Lujan this weekend, and that will be all types of interesting emotion in the pregame show. But hopefully he does start Yannick Bright.
I said as soon as Lujan's available, he's going to play the first game. I still stand by it.
Too. I think he'll play too. I don't know if he'll start, but I think he'll play. Okay, so it is a late night episode, so we have run it a little bit shorter than usual. Do you have any final thoughts, or are you just waiting for that Tom Bogert / Fabrizio Romano / Herman Garcia Grova tweet that says, "Done deal, Inter Miami is landing Rodrigo de Paul"?
It's very simple. Inter Miami didn't particularly play well, won the game. If we continue on this trajectory of not playing particularly well and performances aren't good and then points also don't come to us, there's one saving grace and one saving grace alone. And that's a sweet, baby-faced, beautiful, good-looking Rodrigo de Paul wearing an Inter Miami pink. And we getting the 3 words, here we go. That's what's going to bring a smile to my face.
I was doing some Photoshop. I was doing some graphics in case we get him and we're playing with the thumbnails. And so I put him in Inter Miami jersey. And if you'll indulge me for a second, I will try and bring it up what that looks like, if I can find it real quick. Because he looks good in pink, man. I will just say.
Honestly, he looked good in everything. So I'm not surprised by that.
Hold on one second.
Does he look like a little bit like David Beckham to you?
He looks like he's trying to look like David Beckham to me.
Yeah. Fair enough. That's a David Beckham cosplay.
You know what? Now that I'm looking at the whole graphic, I think maybe it's a little presumptuous, and I don't want to
Okay.
chase anything by putting it on screen.
Yeah.
So I will just
Yeah.
leave it
Don't
in the
do
background.
it.
But guys, thank you so much for
Hopefully
tuning in.
tomorrow.
Yeah, hopefully tomorrow. If and when that comes to a conclusion, we will definitely do a podcast about it. But until then, we're going to leave you for tonight. We will see you guys on the pregame show 1 hour before kickoff on Saturday. It is normal time as Inter Miami hosts Nashville SC, who is second in the table. By the way, I should mention, Inter Miami played one of their games in hand. Yes, last night was not a full game day for everyone in the MLS. So now they only have 3 games in hand, and they are 7 points behind Cincinnati for the top of the Supporters Shield table. They're in 5th place in the Eastern Conference. They are 3 points behind Columbus for 4th. So it's not going to be easy from here on out. They're going to have to be good. They're going to have to win their games, but they have the talent. It's just a matter if they can do it consistently. And it starts on Saturday night where they have a tough stretch coming up.
Lots to play for.
All right, guys, we will see you then. If not sooner, hopefully sooner, that would be cool. But until then, I hope you guys have a great night. We'll see you guys next time. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. Do us a favor and hit that like and subscribe button. Since our first viewer, sharing this with you all has been the very best part. So from the beginning until the end, thank you for being a part of this and have a wonderful day.